I want to thank everyone again for joining us for our presentation today. I just want to, before we get started, remind everyone to keep yourselves on mute. And I will introduce Colleen Ehret now, who will be presenting for you today. Today is her first webinar, so welcome, Colleen.
Thank you, Sonia. And like Sonia said, my name is Colleen Ehret. I'm a teacher at First Children's Services in the Transition Program, and I'm located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I didn't want to use my picture for this because you can see my face on the screen, but I thought that I would share the newest addition to my family. This is Otis. Otis might be interrupting us. Let's hope not. I have a little assistant here with me, so hopefully we won't run into too many problems. Most educators recognize the need for play in early childhood learning, but don't consider it as important at the secondary level. While many schools emphasize traditional teaching methods in the classroom, such as reading books and writing assignments, games offer a different kind of learning experience for students. Having students play games as part of the learning process provides them with a number of educational benefits. From elementary school through high school, teachers can use several types of games to enhance their lessons. Academic studies naturally coincide with rote teaching styles and textbook work. However, it is important to make learning exciting for students with interactive activities. Incorporating fun classroom games into your lesson plans offer a simple way to motivate your students and encourage them to draw on their own creativity and imagination. This webinar will consist mostly of language arts and math games, but most can be adapted for any subject area and any level. You may be familiar with many of these games, but hopefully I can shed some new light with regards to using them in the classroom. Classroom games encourage students to become more motivated in the learning process and interact with other students. This type of engagement can help students understand new concepts or improve on existing knowledge. When students are engaged in the learning process, they are more likely to retain the information they are learning. Holding the interest of students through to traditional teaching methods is not always enough. For some students, being able to actively participate in classroom games can promote a deeper appreciation for the material they are learning and a stronger interest in the learning process. Games in the classroom do more than just provide students with educational experience. They can also help students work on several important skills, including social skills and critical thinking skills. Games provide students with the opportunity to learn about teamwork and practice resolving conflicts or disagreements with other students. They can help students learn how to examine information critically as well. Okay, there are numerous benefits, and I'm going to go through each one. It's a little bit lengthy, but after that, I promise we'll get into the games. So playing games in the classroom increases overall motivation. By playing games, students become more motivated to learn, pay attention, and participate in new tasks. Games help students to become part of a team, as well as take responsibility for their own learning. They can also be a great classroom management tool, helping to motivate a class. Students can become very competitive in the classroom. Games are a great way to control the competitiveness between peers. By using games in the classroom, students can compete against each other while playing a game, then support each other later during learning activities. Most games require problem-solving strategies and planning. By applying a range of strategies in a game, students are able to use their working memory to solve problems, increasing their mental cognition. Stimulating the brain with strategies in a game can be a great brain workout. Using games in a lesson as part of teaching and learning helps to create positivity around the lesson. motivating students with their participation and creating a positive attitude towards learning. Games can also create a positive memory and an experience of learning for students in the classroom. Having to answer questions on a worksheet or produce a page of text can be quite daunting and stressful for some students. It also creates a negative perception of students' learning environment. As an alternative to worksheets, games can be used as a less stressful way for students to demonstrate their knowledge, their skill, and their understanding of a topic. Being less stressed will help students to have a more positive perception of their learning environment and give a true indication of their own learning. Playing a range of content-specific games can increase memory. As they play a game, students need to remember important details about a topic, but also use their working memory to think and act quickly. Games that were made by the students can be some of the most effective. As students construct a game, they are required to use their memory of specific content to create questions and answers suitable for the game. Then use the memory of the topic to play the game. Playing games in the classroom increases class cooperation. Students need to work together as a team while playing as a whole class against the teacher or in small groups when playing games with each other. Through games, students learn how to take turns, build respect, listen to others, and play fairly. Classroom games can also be used as a great team building experience, and I have some games that are team building that I'll show to you later. Playing games requires students to pay great attention to detail. As games can move quickly, a student needs to be alert and attentive. This attentiveness can help students to stay focused on other classroom tasks throughout the day. And fun. Games can be a great deal of fun. When playing a game, endorphins are produced that stimulate the brain and give students a feeling of euphoria. This feeling of euphoria creates a great sense of happiness and excitement for the students in the classroom, developing a positive learning environment. And lastly, games are a great tool to use in the classroom to consolidate new knowledge. After teaching a new content to the class, provide students with a game that will consolidate their understanding and make connections with what they already know. Asking students to create their own content-specific games can also be a great way to assess students at the end of a unit of work. So I've broken the games down into 4 categories. Most of the games I have chosen do not require a lot of resources and can be created rather quickly. Many of the slides are jam-packed with directions and words. I did this so if you want to use the game, you can just go back to the slide and copy it or reread it. I will read the directions and explain each one, but I also try to go through them rather quickly, so hopefully we can have some time at the end and play a game. Also, as Sonia said, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. I will answer as we go or at the end. I thank you for joining. So let's get started. Again, the games are broken into the 4 categories, and I have a total of 17 games to talk about. So getting to know you games, I have 5 of them. These are games I like to use in September, or even if a new student enters your classroom so they can get to know their classmates. This game, which I call Beach Ball, I like to use in September so I can get to know the students, they can get to know me and their classmates. It also shows how many of us are similar, and it can get our shy kids talking. This beach ball game works for any age group. All you do is write a variety of questions on the ball. You toss it to someone. The catcher has to answer whichever question their right thumb is touching or nearest to. You can use whatever questions you feel appropriate for your class. I have used, what is the color of your toothbrush? What's your favorite book? How many siblings do you have? What am I thankful for? Anything. So I've used this in the past, but I also found this website that's all about teacher ball games. That's okay. And you'll see this first one there. But there's also 23 other fun games. So if this is something you're interested, go in. There's sight word games, games you can use for any subject area. So this link is located on the PowerPoint, so you can always go back and check it out. Okay, the next getting to know your game is called Spiderweb. For the first class, I bring a ball of yarn. I have the class, they're seated in a closed circle. I start by holding one end. I state something about myself. For example, maybe something fun I did this summer, or something I learned, or something fun about the prior year. So I state I love cooking. I toss it to someone who keeps hold of his or her part, shares some information about themselves, and then they can toss the ball to the next person who shares, and so on. And this goes on. And before you know it, you quickly have a messy spider web. This can also be used for introducing topics. You can ask the students, tell me something you know about mammals. What do you know about William Shakespeare? And just keep going around. Whole numbers, elements in chemistry. So again, can be used in any subject area. The next getting to know you game is called Would You Rather? And the object here is students again discover similarities and differences between themselves and their classmates. You can begin with light and silly questions, and you can progress to more serious ones depending on your class, the maturity level, the grade level. So you tape a long line down the middle of the classroom using painter's tape. Have all students stand on the line. You can also do this outside. And you would read one of the would you rather questions. And I have a slide that lists some questions, or you can make up your own. Inform students what side of the line they should move to based on their choices. And then you have the students move back to the line and repeat with the next question. And again, students will see, how they're similar to their classmates and how they're different. So here's some sample questions. Again, you can make up your own. Some of them are extremely simplistic, and others are a little bit more thought-provoking. This game was used in the movie Freedom Writers. The one slide, there's a picture from the movie. If you're not familiar with the movie, it might be something you want to check out. It's a great movie, and especially during these trying times. I actually assigned this to my class just this past week for a final assessment. This is for a high school English class. I found a great free curriculum online that has some wonderful challenging questions. So if it's something you want to check out, just Google Freedom Writers free curriculum, it pops up. Another thing about this webinar and games, I really do try to use games from the internet. The ones that I choose are usually ones that are free, and then just put my own spin on them. The next game, again, you might be familiar with, Two Truths and a Lie. So you give the group some time to write down two things about themselves that are true, and one thing that is a lie or not true. Each group member will then share these facts about themselves, and the rest of the group has to figure out which fact is actually a lie. This is also a great game to use when you have a new student come into your class. So they get to learn a little bit about their classmates, and the classmates can learn about them. So I have an example here, and we'll see if you guys can figure out which one is not the truth. So my first statement is, I have been on the People's Court. My second statement, I have never been out of the United States. And my third, I have been teaching for over 36 years. So again, 1, I've been on the People's Court. 2, I've never been out of the United States. And 3, I've been teaching for over 36 years. If you want to take a guess. Okay. Okay, so far I've got 2 number 1s. People think that being up the People's Court. Okay, so it looks like most of you think that I have not been on the People's Court, and I'm going to tell you, you are wrong. I have been on the People's Court. The lie here is that I have never been out of the United States. I have been out of the United States a few times, not a lot, but definitely a few, and I have been teaching for over 36 years. I was on the People's Court. Again, this becomes a story that now I can talk about to my students and explain why in the situation. I will tell you that I won. I won't get into the whole thing, but I did win. And again, students definitely get to know things about me as a teacher. When you share good rapport with your students, you will definitely have more success with them as a classroom. And lastly, for getting to know you type games, I have birthday lineup. This is a nonverbal exercise. So the object is the group forms a single straight line according to birthdays. For example, persons with January birthdays will be at the beginning of the line, earliest January birthdays first, followed in order by later dates. The line progresses by months and days, with December birthdays at the end. Persons with the same birthday share the same place in line. You must communicate non-verbally. No lip reading, no spelling in the dirt if you're doing it outside. When the line is completed, each person will shout out his or her birthday beginning in January. Now, when I first started this, I thought it would be too difficult for my students, and I really was wondering how they would do it. I've done this with numerous classrooms, and my students always amaze me by the ways they come up with to figure this out, and they do get it, and they do get it correct. Now I'd like to move on to some games that are language arts games. Again, though, most of these can be adapted for many subject areas. And like I said, a lot of these will have a lot of words on them, but I'm going to explain them, and then you can always look back. So the first game is called Guess Who? And I like to use this in language arts when we're finished with a novel and we can do this using characters. So it's a guessing game. You use yes or no questions to identify your character. Questions are based upon the traits and characteristics of a character from a story that we've read. Everyone receives a sticky note that they can put on their forehead or an index card that you can put on your back. You do not know who your character is. Players circulate and they ask yes or no questions until everyone has identified the name on their own sticky note or card. This game works well with any size group. However, the larger group, the more fun the game becomes. This uses very few materials and almost no time for preparation. Simply write the names of the characters on the cards or the sticky notes.
I'm muted.
You can give a specific amount of time or number of questions is given to the players. 10 to 20 questions is usually enough, depending on how difficult the category, as well as the age and maturity level of the players. This game should not take more than 20 minutes, 10 for explanation and directions, and 10 for play. I've used this game when teaching Romeo and Juliet, lots of characters, students love it. They must know all about the characters, all the characteristics in order to ask questions about who they are, but then also to be able to answer for their classmates. You encourage your students to move around, to mingle, to ask each other questions. Once a player guesses their character's identity correctly, They can continue to play by answering their classmates' questions, or they can decide, or you can decide, they need to wait in an area away from the class. This game can be adapted using famous people in a history class, time periods. You could use this for the elements in chemistry, lots of other subjects. You could use this if you have different categories that students need to know, terminology, numbers. The next language arts game I like to use is one that I'm sure you're familiar with. This is Pictionary or Charades. These are great ways to encourage your students to get out of their seats and participate in the lesson. I give students a choice because many will claim they can't draw. And I don't expect anyone to be a great artist. You know, stick figures work, but students sometimes become very self-conscious and they really don't want to draw. So I give them the option of playing charades and they can act it out. I like doing this with vocabulary words. So these are vocabulary words that we have already used, discussed, and figured out. I find that using this game, students retain the vocabulary much better than just going over the words. So again, you select a student to stand in front of the room. That student can draw or act out. No speaking's allowed. The rest of the class must then guess what the student is attempting to draw or portray. Students can shout out their guesses, put their hands up. You know, that depends on how you manage your classroom. Whoever guesses correctly can draw or act out the next word. The next game, Boulder Dash, I also like to use with vocabulary. But for this one, I like to use it for introducing vocabulary words that students are unfamiliar with. This game works best with a small class, but if you have a larger class, you can break them into teams and they can answer as a team. So you introduce a new vocabulary word. Say the word is Boulder Dash. You have students write a definition on a slip of paper and they hand it to you. If they don't know the definition, if they've never heard the word, they just make it up. But the object is also for their classmates to think their definition is the real definition. So as the teacher, you first read all the cards to yourself. If the real definition is not included, you quickly write that down and put it in with the other definitions. You then slowly read all the definitions and students have to guess the real one. You will have to read these a few times. I mean, even with only 6 students in a class, you might be reading 7 definitions. You start to get a feel for it. If you need to write little clues on the board, that can sometimes help also. So the object, again, you want your classmates to guess your definition. So you try to make it sound as real as possible. I try to tell kids to stay away from, you know, something that does the thing. You know, they should use words that will give a true definition. So if someone wrote the correct definition, they get 5 points. If their definition was chosen, they get 4 points. And if you give them, you get 3 points. And students can pick the same exact definition. Like someone chose definition 1 and they have to pick another one. It doesn't matter, again, looking for definition. While playing this game, once I introduce the vocabulary word, I have the students write it in their notebook. Once we've figured out the real definition, they then can also write that down. It's a lot more motivating than looking up the vocabulary in a dictionary or online. And again, I feel that they really do retain this. As in charades, they remember, you know, what their classmates did, what they drew, and definitely works when an assessment comes up. The next one is a game also I think you're familiar with. This is another one I like to use for vocabulary, but in this one, students get to choose the word. I don't like to use Hangman, so I've started Snowman. Lynching was a dark and terrible part of our country's history, and anything that evokes that awful time should be avoided at all costs. So in the game of Hangman, when a child misses a letter of the secret word, you draw a circle, and that represents the head in the noose, followed by a long stick, the body, 2 sticks for the arms and the legs, and 2 eyes and a sad face, and that's a total of 9 mistakes. Same thing with snowman. First incorrect answer is the lowest and biggest snowball. Second is the middle. Third is the head. After that, you get a hat like Frosty, 2 sticks for the arms, 2 eyes that you can do together, a carrot nose, and a smile. And voila, 9 mistakes, just like Hangman. But like I said, Snowman, I think, is just a nicer game. You can also use this in a Wheel of Fortune format. Instead of having to guess a word, students can figure out a multi-word phrase, or you might do this with famous people in quotes. In my classroom, we usually have a quote of the day. So if students have written these down and discussed them, we can refer back to them. And the answer to the one that I have here is, I love stumping my class in a game of snowman. Next, I have 4 games to be used in mathematics. Okay, the first game is hot potato. Again, I think something you might be familiar with. This encourages students to think on their feet and draw on a range of subject knowledge. So you need a soft toy, an object, or an item for each group to pass around, a bear, a ball. And if you use this for mathematics, you need a subject-specific theme, say numbers, prime or composite, rational, so on. You divide your class into small groups, hand out an object, a soft toy to each group. The person with the object in each group will start. You start the music. The person who is doing the music, which you as a teacher should not be looking at the class, so you don't want to know who is holding the hot potato at what time. Then it's a race against the music. So if you were using prime numbers, someone would say 2, 3. You could go in order, or you could just say we need to do any prime number. When the music stops, the person who is holding the object is out, but they can also be the one then who starts and stops the music, and kids really enjoy that. You're not allowed to pass the object until you have given a correct answer. So again, this can be used in other subject areas also, as long as you have specific themes. The next math game is called 30 Wonderful, and it uses cards. Cards are wonderful resources to use in a classroom. Numerous games you can find online, or just playing cards. It's great for adding and subtracting, just basic skills facts for mathematics. This game is actually a team building, thought-provoking activity, and it is challenging, but students again rise to the occasion, and it can be done. So you arrange your cards in a 5x5 pattern, rows and columns, and the object is to have them add up. Your cards must add up to 31. Columns and rows. Again, it looks a little daunting, but it can be done. Cards, face cards are worth 10. Number cards are the number on the card, and aces are 11. These are pictures of some former students of mine playing the game. And like I said, it is definitely challenging, but you can come up with winners, and it's a great team building experience and a great game for collaboration and cooperation. Next math game, and this can also be used in any subject, is called the unfair game. And for this game, all you need are a set of problems with answers. So if you have a teacher's edition textbook, it's perfect, especially when it comes to math. And a few prizes, anywhere from 3 to 5 prizes. If you have 7 or more students, I might say use, maybe 10 or more, use 5. But anything less than that, use 3. You can use homework passes, extra credit points as a prize. I will tell you, individual snacks, granola bars, chips, and cookies work especially well. I also use a dollar bill. So those are my 3 prizes. I have a snack, I have a homework pass, and I have a dollar bill. I use 2 decks of cards for determining who will answer a question. And this strategy can be used for many games. So say you have 10 students playing the game. You take 10 cards out of one deck, take the same 10 cards out of another deck, hand those out to the students, and then when it's time to call on a student, you just pull the card, or you have a student pull the card, and no one can say, you know, why'd you pick me? I didn't pick you, the cards picked you, or the student who picked the cards picked you. So it alleviates that, you know, I don't want to be chosen kind of deal. So this is really quick and easy to set up. Prizes are rewarded to students for correctly answering a question they are assigned. Students can win multiple prizes if their number's called more than once. Students are not permitted to talk or share answers during this game. And you just keep posting problems until the end of the class. You'll be amazed to hear your students say, hurry up, give us another problem, because they want to get those prizes before the class ends. And whenever the class ends, whoever has the prizes gets to keep them. Of course, if one student has most of the prizes, students will complain this is unfair, but you can always answer with, I know, it's the unfair math game. So again, you just post a problem on the board. If you're using a math problem, take it from your textbook. You already have the answer there. The entire class must, at their seat, figure out the problem. You can determine how long it is by the difficulty or the level of the question. Then you use your deck of cards. You pull a card. That student is the one chosen to answer. If their solution is correct, they get to pick one of their prizes. If it's incorrect, you continue until you have a student that has the correct answer. Once that you have that student gets to pick the prize. So if you have 3 prizes, they get to choose one of them. You then post your second problem. Again, you repeat the process until someone has won the second prize, and you continue this until all the prizes are gone. But this is where the fun begins. So your prizes are taken, but you post your 4th question if you had 3 prizes, and the student who gets it right gets to steal a prize from any of the other students. When you're doing this with food, I suggest that you keep the food, whether it's the little granola bar or a bag of chips, but keep it away from the students. Nobody wants their hot, clammy hands touching their granola bar. So I kind of keep that off to the side. And at the end, though, you know who has it. Again, students are really motivated by this game. And at the end, they'll also have maybe textbook questions completed in their notebook that they would have just been doing on their own, possibly. The next game is another card game. This is called 25. In this game, students can practice addition and subtraction of positive and negative numbers. So you arrange your students in groups of 2 or more. They deal out the cards, as many possible, from a deck. So you'd need a deck of cards for each group. Each student will have an equal number of cards, and you can put extra cards aside. Each black group represents a positive number, and every red card represents a negative. So, in other words, a black 7 is positive 7, a red 3 is negative. Aces have a value of 1, jacks 11, queens 12, kings 13. At the start of the game, each player places his or her cards in a stack face down. Ask the player to the right of the dealer to turn up one card and say the number on the card. For example, if a player turns up a black 8, he or she says 8. You continue from one player to the next in a clockwise direction. The second player turns up a card, adds it to the first, and says the sum of the two cards aloud. So, if the card is a red 9, that's -9. The player must say 8 plus -9 equals -1. The next player goes, takes their top cards, adds it to the next. Again, if it's a black 2, that's a +2. The student would say -1 plus 2 is 1. And the game continues until someone shows a card that, when added to the stack, results in a sum of exactly 25. To add an extra challenging dimension to this game, you might use subtraction of negative numbers, which is much more difficult. Doing this will reinforce that skill. For students who find this game too challenging, you might change the sum you're aiming for a number less than 25, and the game will end more quickly. As students become more comfortable with the game, though, you can also increase the numeric goal. Students can also, if they're in groups of 3 and 4, can help their teammates. So if the classmates aren't sure of what -1 plus 2 is, they can help them and they can answer. They also have to monitor, because you as the teacher will go back to the game and you have to do all the addition and make sure that they did get exactly 25. And if it's a mistake, then they must restart. If you're playing this with different groups, then the group who gets to 25 first can be your winning group. And lastly, I have 5 review games here, final review games. I like to use these at the end of the year or the end of a unit. Also, these are games that I'm sure you are familiar with, but hopefully I can shed some light on how to use these in a classroom, or maybe I've done the research for you and you can find these online real easily. So bingo, it's quick, it's easy to create. All you need is a list. Students can do this without the online site that I'm going to show you. They can also generate their own cards. But if you go to this website, and again, it is free. All you have to do here is choose your title, enter your words, or you can again do this with math and use numbers, important dates in history, important historical figures, important scientific terms. You pick your background, you pick your object, and this bingo card generator will make your cards. You can print them, or you can do this virtually. If you print them, I suggest laminating them. You can then use them again. Students can use dry erase markers and just wipe them off each time. I have bingo chips that I purchased. You can use pennies, anything that works for the class. So this is a card that I created from a story that we read. We read The Pigman, the novel The Pigman, this year. So I might say to a student, it's not just, who has Bobo on their card. It's who or where did the characters go during the story to visit Bobo? And then they have to know the events of the story. What is the librarian's name? Miss Rowan, yep. Okay, so again, you can play traditional bingo with this. If they get it wrong, they can unclick it. Great to use at the end as a review, and they must know what has happened in your stories. Next, I have Jeopardy. It is not a typo, it is a party. I've used this numerous times in my classroom. I used to make up the cards myself and make up a board, but now, thanks to the wonderful wide world web, we have a lot of these online. So I found this on Slides Carnival. I also use Slides Carnival to create this presentation, a lot of really nice backgrounds. A lot of great resources, and again, it is free. So you would go to this site and it tells you step by step how to create your Jeopardy game, and it is extremely simple and it's just laid out for you, and it is free. So I started one. It was for my English 12 for a final assessment. Also, these instructions are included on the website. You can do this in Google Slides. You can do it in PowerPoint. I'm more familiar with PowerPoint, so that's what I tried, or what I started. I'm going to be honest with you, I did not finish this one. But as you can see, my English 12 class, we read The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. So I started a category there. We work on grammar. We watched the movie Rain Man. So I would have come up with 3 other categories for a final review. And kids just love a game format. Very easy. The generator tells you just put your answer and the students come up with the question. So I put for The Curious Incident, the dog in the nighttime, the main character. Students would have to come up with the answer, Christopher. Okay, they tell you, write the answer. Contestants apply the question. It's really simple to set up. Setting of the novel, they'd have to tell me where it was, or where it took place. Another end of the year activity is the sum of all Skittles. This is more for community reflection, which I feel is really important for students. Things they learned about themselves and their classmates, not necessarily about a specific content area skill. So you have students and they sit in a circle. You pass around a bowl of Skittles, tell them to take as many as they like, but usually not more than 5. And they should definitely use gloves. Once all students have taken their desired amount, then you tell them what each Skittle represents. So you might put these 5 colors on the board, or maybe you have them on cards that you can have on the desk that they can look at. So orange is how a classmate positively impacted you. Purple is a positive thing you learned about a classmate. Red is a memory. Green is something you learned about yourself. And yellow is something you appreciate about the class or a classmate. And after they've shared each comment, they can eat the corresponding Skittle. I think this is an activity where your students can grow closer in groups that might not be effective in other ways, and definitely a great end of the year activity. Quizalize is something you can also find online. It's an engaging and fun quiz game. I am going to be totally honest with you. I have not used this, but I've found some real positive feedback from my colleagues about this game. And after looking at it, I know that students will find it very enjoyable, very fun, and beneficial. If you go to the website, not that one, but that's okay. Yeah, this, okay, we're going back. Yes, so this tells you all about it. And again, it is free. You sign in. There are numerous quizzes here for your students. Over 300,000 teachers have used it, and all different subject areas. I've also included on this slide a link that answers any kind of questions you may have about this game. Again, I said I have not used it, but I will be using it this year. It looks really, really fun. It can be virtual or just used in your classroom. And lastly, I have Kahoot. Now, some of you might have been using Kahoot in your classroom. If you haven't, you definitely have to sign up for it. This is a really, really fun game. And you can create your own games or you can steal others.
Hi, we're Kahoot. We're on a mission to make learning awesome. Game-based learning platform is used by millions of people all over the world. Teachers, students, company employees, and lifelong learners. Kahoot makes it easy to create fun learning games or trivia quizzes in minutes, anytime, anywhere. We call them Kahoots. It works for any subject, in any language, on any device. You can also discover and play existing games. There are millions of Kahoots in our library. Kahoot can be played in a live setting with questions on a big screen or on your mobile device where you see questions and answers on one screen. As well as in schools, Kahoot is played in companies, at events, and even parties to make learning awesome. Sign up today at kahoot.com. Let's play.
All right, so I'm going to show you.
Hi, we're Kahoot.
My account here. Okay. So I can show you some of the games that I've made up. Or some of them that I have stolen. Okay, so here are my games, but again, you can look in the middle here for show more, and you can find games on any subject area. For some of the games that I've used, I have one we're going to try today, but I taught driver's ed this year for the first time. I found games to be used for review of all the chapters. One suggestion though, please make sure you read over the questions. I have found questions that have mistakes in them, grammatical mistakes, spelling mistakes, kind of drives me nuts. So I always read them over and make sure that they are correct. Also, you can make your own games here, and it's very, very easy. You can use this for any subject area. As you can see, I've used it for reviews, for algebra. I've used it for novels we've read or short stories. So this works for anything. And again, it is free. There is a paid version, but I've never used it. So let's see if we can play. It's only 5 questions. And what you need to do is go to kahoot.it. So it's www.kahoot.it, and you put the code in. Will you join? All right, as a teacher, I can see. Did they see this? Yep. All right, so I've got 1 player in. Okay, got a few coming in now. Great. And one thing about this, I ask students to, they have to sign in. Sometimes some of our students, especially high school students, middle school students, we'll put some names that are inappropriate. So I can go in and I can cancel them right out and tell them they need to come back with an appropriate name. All right, so we have 13 players. Yep, we got some more coming in. I'll give a few more seconds and then we'll just play, just so you get the idea. All right, I'm going to start the game. Yep. Love the music. And even if you have used this in class or your students are familiar with it, they love it. You get to pick your pictures. And here we go. Use your device, look at the color. Okay, so I can see that the majority of people playing knew the name of the webinar. As a classroom skill, something I'm looking for, if I find that too many people don't know what's going on, then of course I would have to go back and reteach. So this is a great formative assessment also. And hit next. And it starts to show you also who's doing well in your class, who's not. The kids love the competition. Okay, question number 2. Again, so you know, I get to pick my questions here, my answers, and the pictures or the graphics that I use. Okay, if I find that everybody has answered, I can quickly go to the answer. I don't have to wait for the timer. You can also use the amount of time you feel is appropriate for each question. I only put these on like 20 seconds because this is just a fun game. But if you're doing a math game and it's a difficult problem, you might give the students a minute, 2 minutes. All right, I can also see here that most people paid attention to Otis. I did have an Oscar and an Otto too. That's why we stuck with those O names. No Ollie. All right, Claire is still up. Claire, we now have Sonia in the lead. All right, true or false? You can use a true or false question. Okay, birthday lineup, you cannot talk. So again, you can use questions that have a quiz kind of format or true or false. And I believe it's the last question, yes? Nope, 2 more left. Okay, majority of you got this one correct. I would know then that I do not have to go back and reteach. All right, lastly. Oh, and there we have Dre in the lead. Okay, I chose this one because there are 2 correct answers, so you can set it up that way also. All right, you can see first, second, and third. Students love this. You could maybe also have prizes for this game if that's something. All right, so that brings you to the end. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat. I thank you for attending. I hope you're able to use some of these games in your classroom. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. I see that someone asked about, are these available in Spanish? Or editable, not able to eat. Yes, you could, I mean, as you've seen with some of them that can be used in almost any language. If you play some of the games, the questions you use can definitely be used in Spanish. What? And you can just create them in Spanish, yes. As for Kahoot, I'm sure you could make up your own questions in Spanish, and I would think in Quizalize you could find them also. Are there any other questions? How do I see?
Okay, I just want to address one of the questions. The slideshows will be shared. I'll email them out to you. And also, where will this webinar be available? So if you go onto our webpage, www.firstchildrenservices.com, you will see at the very bottom our webinars. So if you click on that page, you'll see all of our most of our recent webinars. So you can view it there. It'll also be on our YouTube channel under First Children's Services. And I just want to remind everyone one more time, if you came in late, please make sure you enter your full name in the chat if you would like a professional development certificate.
Okay, Sonia, thank you so much. Do you see any other questions here that I need to answer?
Don't see any.
Okay, again, my email is on the last slide here, and I believe it's even on the first. I can be reached there, so if anyone wants to shoot me an email, I'll get back to you. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
also forgot to point out that one of those, that our school in Fanwood is behind me in the picture, for those of you who weren't on earlier, I mentioned it. That is our school in Fanwood in Union County. And I'm not really in the parking lot.